This episode is brought to you by Extra.Fund, a Dubai-based fully doxed DeFi company. Extra has applied capital protection mechanisms and guarantees that were previously unavailable in the blockchain industry. Their guaranteed fund program is designed to compensate you if the token price drops. The fund will automatically match up to 90% of the initial purchase price. Get over to Extra.Fund for more information about how you can buy, stake, and earn profits no matter what the crypto markets are doing. Link in the description below.
This my two Satoshis. Who need 2 cents when they can get double from stacking Toshis? Yeah.
Hola, buenos dias, GNGs. I am Check with 2Ks. This is another my two Satoshis. Another two. This is another my two Satoshis. And I got a couple of crypto things. I got some non-crypto things, but I am going to put them together in regards to how they connected in what I call the carnival, right? The carnival is this thing up here called a brain bucket. So getting into a couple of things that have kind of gone on or been in announcements and stuff for, like the last couple of days to about a week or so. And so here's what I'm talking about. I didn't really see anybody really talking about this, but I thought this was a very interesting thing in regards to what Kraken is doing to help support the Ukrainian people, or at least the people who have accounts on Kraken. And when I first saw this particular story, the way that the clickbait title went, it made it seem like they were just taking Russian account holders' money and then giving it over. But as I read into the article, and again, the link for this will be in the description on this or in the comment section. But the idea of what they're doing is they're taking the transaction fees generated from accounts that are connected to who they're identifying as Russians, and saying, okay, we're going to take X amount of the money crypto generated from that in regards to the value, and then we're going to donate it through an airdrop to accounts that are identified as Ukrainian accounts. Now, this is a very interesting move. Understand what's happening here. Companies in the space are taking sides. Some of the stuff is fair, some of the stuff is arguably not fair, but nonetheless, this is still something that is able to be done, right? And so looking at it on the end of, and I've been saying this more so on the LinkedIn side of things, in that as individual people are free to use this open source technology we call blockchain, so are private companies, so are public companies, so are governments that we like and governments that we don't like, right? So whether they are technically a communist government or whether they are technically on a democracy or a republic system, it doesn't matter. The technology works for anybody, right? And so in this particular setup of what Kraken is looking to do, and which I thought was interesting, was being able to take the past transaction fees that were done like a year or two back or whatever, and then say, okay, well, we have X amount of that, we know what it is. The catch though is you have to have, I think, had the account before the 9th, before the 9th of today or whatever, but you had to have the account before a period, and you had to at least started your base level KYC process. It's not just anybody jumping on the account who has a Ukrainian or in that region IP address. No, you specifically had to have already had the account, and you have to pass the KYC process. So this is definitely not a free-for-all. I do imagine some people might try to figure out something to do here and there, but nonetheless, I think that for the people who were supporters of the Ukrainian people who, you can't help where you're born at, who are in Russia, I think this goes towards that end goal of what they were trying to do, where they were anti-war in regards to their homeland country, but they also did want to show support to the people of Ukraine. And they were doing things like trying to, push crypto directly over or try to do some kind of fiat-based thing. I think this reaches that end goal of supporting the people who are in need. At least I'm hoping that's how it plays out. But again, this is just something interesting to note, as this is a company in the crypto space. It's a CFI company. If you've been paying any attention to what Jess has been, saying off on Twitter, he's telling y'all, We don't like same thing that CZ says from Binance. We don't make the rules, we follow the rules, but we just not arbitrarily going to do things just because we quote sit in this position to be able to, you know, stop accounts or freeze accounts or push things through for certain accounts. And that's just what's going on in the space right now. Like it or not, that's where we are, right? This is why we talk about not your keys, not your cheese, right? DeFi in the sense of actually being able to connect other systems together within the space, non-centralized crypto exchanges, that's another option. And there's always P2P. It always goes back to the basics, right? Person to person, real life people. But moving on to the next story is this other one that I got. And this is what's going on in Dubai. If you don't know about the United Emirates, definitely interesting to see that they're looking to step up what they've already been working on. And this is under the guidance of, and you know, I don't even want to mess up his name, but I'm gonna just say the current sheikh, right? If you know anything about over, you know, in the Middle East and how they are about money, they are very long-term thinkers in regards to things that they invest in and how they look to cultivate their financial systems. And so what he's basically saying in regards to this article, again, this will be in the copy description on this. And so you can read it on your own. But the basic idea is, hey, we're going to look to implement some new rules that will help foster this particular part of the Middle Eastern region to be more of a hub and friendly to blockchain, crypto related businesses and development and innovation within the industry. That's the bottom line of what he's looking to do. So basically, this is following the regulatory path. I look at these different things going on right now. I think what we're going to see more of, especially as we get into summer and move towards 2025 and stuff, is more countries are going to start covering up their piece of the stake in this thing we call blockchain technology and the various use cases being crypto, NFTs, you know, title and property stuff. It's going to be a number of different things that for industries are going to match and cross all over the place, because why? We live in a new digital age. Everything is connected, but governments are going to start more and more figuring out the regulations that they want or need in their area. And some are going to be in sync with each other. Some are not going to be in sync with each other. So keep that in mind. Again, if you know anything about the sandbox out there, as far as the Middle East is concerned, they definitely got the money. They definitely have people who are interested in investing in spending. For the folks that I know who run in those circles, it is definitely a different thing than compared to the US or compared to like Asia or Africa, and how they move in planning their development. And arguably for the size of Dubai, they definitely have a sizable budget, and the money definitely flows out there. Again, you can check this article out on your own. All right, so I'm gonna push on to something, wrapping back around in regards to the Russia situation. So now a couple of countries look to jump on the bandwagon and say, hey, we're also going to do or join in on the sanctions, right? And when I seen this particular list, it was just like, I kind of wonder what that's about. Now, Japan, as far as, you know, how they've never been any, like, they're just not one of those step out and be different countries as far as how the government works, as far as how the society works. Ironically enough, I don't know, was it them or if it was South Korea who has a new prime minister or a new head of state person who's pro crypto. I don't remember which country it was, if it was Japan or if it was South Korea. But nonetheless, though, for how Japan is saying it, it's like, oh, we're going to watch the situation in regards to how we participate within the sanctions against the Russian government, Russian allegories, Russian high-valued people and entities. Switzerland, on the other hand, is like, oh yeah, we're going to all of a sudden start following sanctions. If you know anything about the history of Switzerland and how they have operated when it comes to sanctions, Switzerland has always been in this neutral DMZ kind of zone of where they are a part of the EU even before the EU thing came into play, but they always stood in a position of they didn't take sides locally speaking. So what would end up happening, as far as how historically they've been, is you could have been a dictator, you could have been whatever communist, you could have been whatever person on, like, you know, the world's crime list. You could have went to Switzerland and had the bank account, had your money sitting in there, and you'd have been a-okay cool. All of a sudden now, Switzerland is like, well, we're going to change how we operate as far as sanctions, and we're going to jump on the bandwagon against Russia. And when I heard this, and this I think is like a couple of days old on this one, it really made me wonder what was going on with like what conversation took place in order for them to be like, hey, we're going to jump in on this. Because their track record for multiple decades has always been they stand off on the side and they hold people's money, because primarily in the financial world, they were like the escrow place. Like, that's where you put it. Everybody know nothing's going to happen with the money. They good. Here we are now in 2022, and all of a sudden they changing how they operate. So I mean, I'm not rich enough, nowhere near, to, you know, have a Swiss account in that sense. But I wonder what are the people who actually have money now thinking, since the Swiss government decided to now follow the sanctions that are being held against Russia and its allegories, its high value people, its certain entity companies and stuff like that. What does that mean for everyone else? You now change the rules. This will have some foreseen and unforeseen blowback, in my opinion. Also do remember, I'm just some guy on the internet, and this is not even financial advice at all. This is just me looking at certain things going on and seeing how they connect, at least in my head, right? So moving on to the next thing. Here's a funny thing, right? There was also the talk about, hey, Russia is going to look to use cryptocurrencies to avoid sanctions. And then it went to, oh, Russia's going to use Bitcoin. All the maxis were like, you know, singing and shouting and popping bottles and just being all happy and giddy because Russia was going to use Bitcoin to avoid sanctions. Then the narrative started changing that, well, you know, Russia's not really going to use it because the government level. So we're talking about the financial companies, the banks, the financial sector, high valued, high net worth individuals, certain industry sectors in regards to their tech company, their industrial development companies, and the government itself. The narrative was initially, hey, they're going to use crypto. Then it went to, they're going to use Bitcoin. And now we're at the, well, you know, it really wouldn't work, which goes into this story right here, where it's like, well, Russia trying to use Bitcoin or really any crypto at the governmental bilateral trade level doesn't work, because effectively, as far as the countries that are participating in the sanctions against Russia, they all are agreeing that, hey, we won't take any form of financial transaction, or we won't engage in any financial transactions or business. So even if we could sell a product or service or do a clearing of a financial instrument with them in a crypto, we're not going to do it because we're not accepting the crypto. Not saying they can accept the crypto, it's them saying we won't accept the crypto, which is also interesting because prior to the invasion and everything happening, Russia was already setting in the legal framework for how cryptocurrencies was going to work within their financial structure, right? So in my mind, I'm just like, why are we even talking about this? They're not talking about the everyday down, ground level people within the country. They're talking about the governments. They're talking about the industrial level businesses. They're talking about the high net worth people and the allegories and just people who are like, multimillionaires over there. They're talking about those people, right? Who are on the watch list, the ban list. Now, as far as the everyday on the ground level people are concerned, even though the government through their central bank has made their regulations around how they're looking to have cryptocurrencies on the spectrum operate within their system, it doesn't mean that the people still can't use the technology to do a peer-to-peer thing. It doesn't mean that the technology all of a sudden stopped working. And this is the thing that gets me about how the narrative is moving along into different phases, let's say it that way, right? And so this one I found interesting as far as how the workaround is no longer a thing. Again, it's not a matter of the technology stop working. It's not a matter of the being able to send or receive or do an exchange of value. It's that the other countries that they could have X amount of business with are saying, no, we're just not going to do anything. Nothing's actually wrong with the crypto. And so it goes into this. Now, why I bring this article up, again, link for this is going to be inside the copy, is because one, when I was like going around and trying to find different articles talking about what's going on here, most of the articles were really short like this, literally just like this short. And they were referencing the same White House press meeting, okay? And what was being said was like, basically the US was bragging in this conference call, which I'm gonna get to over here. The US there was a press conference, and this is where a particular quote came out that goes to this right here, right? The original quote that caught my attention was this, where it says, on Russia in particular, the use of cryptocurrency, we don't think is a viable workaround to set off financial sanctions we've imposed across the entire Russian economy, and in particular to its central bank. That's that particular quote, right? Now, initially I was trying to find that quote and where it came from, and that brought me to the White House press release, which they had the teleconference about. So no one's actually in the physical room. Now I'm kind of going through this thing and I'm reading through it. And what I found most interesting is that, because all of the different articles that I was coming across that was talking about this particular quote on how the US sanctioned Russia, and so crypto wasn't a viable option, no one was giving the name of who said it. And that kind of threw me off, because now it's like, well, why isn't anyone referencing who actually made that particular comment? Here's the reason why. They actually redact the name of who's in the meeting. This is the official White House website, and this is the transcript from that teleconference, which happened on the 8th. They couldn't put it out for a little bit later. So if you see it up here, right, the actual teleconference happened on the 8th. They couldn't say nothing until the 9th, and then it only had to be put out at a certain time. And so I really find this interesting that they actually redacted the name of the people in the meeting. Like, if this is a press release and we're having a public conversation or a distribution of information, why are we redacting who said what? Nonetheless, right? I would argue that we're watching transparency just totally degrade and dissipate in what is argued as the greatest democracy of its time and in history. But like, stuff like this happens. This is right in front of your face, right? There's no hiding it. This is right in front of your face. But let me move on to the next thing, because I got to get to the closing stuff of this. Can't run too long. You know, I know how attention spans work. Link for this will be in the copy. You can read the whole thing for yourself. It's actually fairly long, and a couple of other things are said. But again, that was the one thing that kind of got me in regards to no one was acknowledging who said that particular thing, right? So now let me jump over to what X amount of folks are talking about today, which is the White House, Biden's executive order in relation to cryptocurrency. And I'm gonna say it this way, on the surface value, it's a nothing burger. And when I say it's a nothing burger, it's because basically there was it basically boiled down to, we're going to set up committees to do another study and then to write about cryptocurrencies as it relates to the different financial agencies and departments, and it's the major ones, so like the Treasury, Sinfin, and like, you know, the IRS. So all the different financial regulatory bodies are getting together to study and write reports about cryptocurrency and how it relates to their lane of jurisdiction. In my mind, when I read what X amount of the bullet points was, and let me jump over here because this person did the same kind of thing where they went and just, jumped through. And also, I gotta say, the timing on that like Treasury Department slip where Yellen had did like a report, or like not a report, but a press release thing as far as like, oh, here's how the Treasury's looking at Biden's executive order. And this is what a lot of people ran with, right? This is what everyone was like, oh, it's going to be like this. It's going to be like this. I'm going to say, here's my interpretation of this. Again, you could read through the whole thing. And there's definitely a number of other places that you could read through the cross-reference. You can always go, be a DJ and dumpster dive over on Reddit. But my takeaway from what this said, and then what I've seen from Yellen's post, and then a couple of other things I'm paying attention to, right? If you ever read the OFAC report that comes out of the Treasury Department, as well as things that the IMF has said, what I would take this as is the nothing burger is because they're following the traditional bureaucratic process of, let's make a committee to study it. It's gonna take 60, 180 days. It might take a whole year. But in the background, what I would see playing out in this situation is the different departments are going to use their resources to start putting in capital flight controls as it relates to cryptocurrency and being able to exit into fiat, or being able to transition from the crypto into the fiat. So you can expect, as the year progresses, as we move towards 2025 and 2030, there's going to be a number of upgrades in the regulatory compliance requirements of CeFi companies. There's going to be a whole nother set of how, certain but certain departments, as far as like the IRS and stuff, are going to really start targeting real decentralized platforms, not the stuff that markets as a DeFi project or platform, not that stuff. I'm talking about real decentralized networks, okay? And in my mind, how I look at this is, while they're studying, there will be an active effort to collude together to put in these capital flight controls, because this is a preemptive move for when I think that at some point, I don't know when, there will be an acknowledgement of, hey, we're in a recession, inflation is going to keep hitting, and we got to make sure people don't run on the banks. We got to make sure people don't try to exit out of USD by like, quote, buying this, that, and the third. And I would argue, put this in the context of like Greece and Canada. Just put that as a mental picture in your head. If you don't know what I'm talking about with Greece and Cyprus, you can definitely go Google that. You can DuckDuckGo it, okay? And that will bring it more to relevance as far as reading some of the stories or just going on YouTube and watching the videos that explain that whole scenario. And then we all hopefully remember, Canada ain't even a month old. Like, that just happened, okay? And so that's how I'm looking at the Biden executive order. The front story of starting the committee, that's the nothing burger. It's what they're going to be doing behind the scenes to start pushing into the financial sector's more robust capital flight controls. That's at least how I look at it. This isn't financial advice. This is just how my brain connects things together and what I see for what I'm paying attention to. Right. So now, moving on to this next thing. I heard about this the other day, and I was kind of just like, what's going on with this, right? So Mastercard and Visa, everyone in the States know them. Pretty much you can use a Master or Visa card globally in most of the countries in the world, right? Here's an interesting thing that they recently acknowledged. It's like, hey, we're going to put our fees up for the retail operators, right? So now the way that I took this particular thing and how it's going to relate to crypto people, here's one of the things that I think. The credit card companies, they have their number crunchers. They have their people who do their statistics. They have a different perspective on how the national economy looks and how they project out how they'll be able to make money and staying in a profit, staying in the green. And so here it is, you have it that they wanted to raise, at least according to this article, which references the Wall Street Journal, they wanted to raise the rates 2 years back. But lo and behold, couldn't do it because C-19 happened, blah, 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 blah. So now you got to go, well, we can do it now because C-19 don't matter no more because everything is about the blue and yellow flag. All right, whatever. Now, let's say small businesses, independent owner operators, mid-sized companies, right? But this is more so about small business and what it means at the retail level, at like the me and you level as regular everyday people. The credit card company says to the retailer, hey, we're gonna bring the fees up, which means at some point, you might start seeing in certain, small mom and pop stores or small mom and pop kind of, storefronts or whatever, or restaurant places, there's a new minimum spending amount if you're using a card. You might see that. Why? Because the store person is trying to deal with the new higher rate that the credit card company is putting on them to at least stay some level of break even or marginal profit for what they are selling as a product or a service. The other part of it is you might not see a sign saying, hey, there's a new minimum purchase rate. You'll just start seeing the prices of things that they sell as a product or service go up, which would then cover what that new rate is. The bottom line is the credit card companies see that people are going to end up spending less. And as let me not say all of us know this, but there is a thing of Americans in particular have a habit of depending on covering their lifestyle through debt, which means they don't actually have the money in the bank. They don't actually have the cash in hand. Instead, they live off debt. And this right here, to me, is an indicator that the credit card companies are seeing that people might not be spending the same way they were over the last 24 months when people had, the stimulus checks, when people didn't have to worry about a mortgage or deal with light bills or deal with other utility things, and gas was lower. Gas is going up. Point being is there is a shift happening, and we're seeing it in different industries. We're seeing it through different sectors of things that we deal with in everyday life. For a number of people, credit cards are those things that they use in everyday life, and they've been living off of that and gotten used to a certain level of operation. Some of that's going to come into question going through the rest of this year and moving forward in the decade. And the last thing I want to close out with is this joint right here, right? This is my LinkedIn, right? And I might have mentioned it before, but LinkedIn is where I have more of like the written out thought on stuff, right? And so in this particular case, and I'm bringing this up in regards to a gentleman by the name of David Lappin. David Lappin is a consultant now who works for, C3. He used to work for the Bipartisan Policy Committee as a communications vice president. And then he also used to work for something in the DOD, I can't remember, but former Marine guy, Colonel, sorry, being respectful. I only bring this up because as I've just gone through all these different stories, the indicator of there are things happening that are being presented to us through different news sources, through our different social media platforms, through regular TV, through word of mouth, whatever, right? And X amount of the times, you will have people who have a position of authority or in a high value, situation where they will say things that at face value sound relevant, sound good. But when you actually break down and look at or listen to what they're talking about, it's not as, my point being is that this was a tweet he made. Funny enough, like about an hour afterwards, I ended up getting blocked, but whatever. I wrote it out this way in regards to the first part of the sentence, or the first sentence. This is gaslighting. This is trying to tell people that they're going to be okay. This man, because of the positions that he holds and what he does, he's operating in a very different level of life and his operational environment. So he doesn't worry about gas the way that me and you will worry about gas as regular people. And more than likely, his gas coverage is something that is a part of like the taxpayer, spending item. Like that's the truth of the matter, like because of what he does. Okay. The other thing is the bottom part in purple, like virtual signaling. I find that when you start looking through social media enough and you start, really picking apart what people are saying, There's a lot of virtual signaling going on. And it's coming from people who, you know, have fancy titles or in some high enough or whatever position. And I tell folks all the time, especially for what's going on right now in crypto, if they not at your level of operational environment, I would be very leery of whatever it is they say. I'm gonna tell you the same thing for me. Whatever it is I put out on here, this is just how stuff works over in my head. But like, definitely question, like, you know, verify. Don't trust it, verify. Go read through the article, find something else that's connected to it, and then cross-reference the stuff. Why? Because people are gonna say things that work towards their agenda at the end of the day and the bottom of the line. And that doesn't mean that they're saying what they're saying that is really and truly in your best interest. And I'm not saying I'm out here double speaking, but I definitely say be leery of the people who are doing things like gaslighting and virtue signaling to you when they're not in your same level of lifestyle or like just where you are and what you can afford. Just like I don't know what's in your pockets, you don't know what's in my pockets. You know, I can't tell you how to operate. I don't know what are your responsibilities and what you're connected to. So that's the last thing I want to leave it on. Nonetheless, Sean, I'll just close it out with this. This is my 2 Satoshis, and I'm Trek with 2 Ks, and it's things happening in the space, and I'm definitely opinionated on some of these things. This is just me dropping out what I'm thinking. And yo, if you like what I said, if you don't like what I said, the comments is always open. My DMs on all of the platforms is always open. If you want to find me, if you want to see more of the long form stuff of what I write about, LinkedIn is where you end up finding that. But other than that, you know, helping the Crypto Blood channel grow, doing my 2 Satoshis. So definitely like, share, put some other people on to this. Oh, by the way, this particular episode is brought to you by Cigar Recon. If you're about that smoke life, the cigar life, check out the Cigar Recon. Website is cigarrecon.com. And again, I'm Trek with 2 Ks. All right, y'all. 1.